Hello there, my name is David Pustansky. I am once again joined by Adam Hughes. That's a great start. Once again joined.
Lovely start.
Yeah,
Lovely
by
start.
Adam Hughes on another podcast here. And on today's show, we're going to be discussing movies, television, more like cult stuff, probably almost certainly some Doctor Who, Harry Potter, Star Trek and that kind of thing. But I'll start with, what have you been watching anything during lockdown recently?
I have actually. I've rewatched Life on Mars, which is the Philip Lannister and John Sims series, and I've watched Ashes to Ashes as well. Because I only watched series one of that. I think it was a great show. Ashes to Ashes was just fantastic, but I only watched one series of it, and then I watched the other two recently, and it's just fantastic. So I went back and rewatched Life on Mars again. I love it, and it's absolutely brilliant.
Okay,
absolutely brilliant shows.
I will do my best to give you like a little brief overview in case anyone out there who's listening or watching hasn't seen either of these shows. Is that they are one continuous series. So the first half of this story is called Life on Mars, and then it continues with similar characters and some reoccurring characters called Ashes to Ashes. But the basic concept is there's a police officer in the modern day. I think he gets shot.
No, he gets
hit by a car or something.
Yeah, he gets hit by a car. He gets hit by a car, and then Alex Drake gets shot.
Oh, okay.
Ashes to Ashes.
But okay, so there's some like life-threatening injury, and they wake up and they're in the past, and they're just accepted that everyone else believes that, well, you were meant to be here. You're meant to be a new cop starting in the police force, and they don't have any memory of them living in the 1970s or 1980s. But then they have to try and fit in there and try and work out how they can get back to the present if they can, because all of their memories, like, so the character played by John Sim, who's hit by a car, he has memories of being a child in the 1970s, so he has some familiarity with it, but he knows that he doesn't belong in that time. Is that
he's and then in I think that's it. Yeah, it's a really cool concept. It's the story kind of unravels as it goes on. It sort of builds a bit more, and you start to learn a bit more about this world and the characters, and some new characters get introduced. So in both series, there's 3 cops who appear. So there's Gene Hunt, who's like the DCI. He's a really morally corrupt yet good cop. Who kind of runs both of the stations. Then there's DC Skelton and I
can't remember the character's
name.
or
something. Yeah, I can't remember. DC Skelton. There's the other one, DC Carling, DS Carling. Those 3 appear in both. But then their individual stories, start to sort of come out in Ashes to Ashes a bit more. So in Life on Mars, it's not really kind of mentioned what they do or why Adam, they're there.
So shall we just quickly make the decision that we'll give the people, anyone watching or listening, that there will be spoilers, because otherwise
let's give that.
So there will be spoilers. So you may need to skip on, because I'm sure we won't talk just about Life on Mars and stuff. But if you want to watch Life on Mars and then come back and listen to this, then we'll be able to. But it's I don't know how long I'll be able to go on it, just because it's a long time since I've seen it. But so the end of Life on Mars, does he get home? I can't remember.
He does. So he gets home. So he's completed his mission.
Oh, I remember now. I remember now. So he gets home, but then doesn't he kill himself or something?
He does, yeah. So at the end of it, so he kind of gets back to, so he is in the middle of a massive shootout, and he sees a light, and someone says, it's all done, you're fine, you can go home now. He leaves through the light. He wakes up in a hospital bed in 2006. In modern times, in 2006, when it was produced. And he realizes he's depressed, sort of, for the rest of that kind of the time he's in 2006, and he realizes actually he wants to be in the 1970s again, because everything he kind of built up was in the 1970s and he loved it. And then at the end, he jumps off the roof at the end, and he appears straight in the middle of the shootout again and saves the day.
So in that sense, in the future, like in the present, to like us watching it, we'll see the idea that he was able to get back home, but because he knows he didn't save his friends from the 1970s, he thought, right, I need to have this near death or death experience again, end up perhaps back in a coma, so it will send me back there, which it does. And then he's able
he dies. He outright dies at that point.
Okay, so they definitely say he dies. Because did they clarify that in Ashes to Ashes, or did we know at the end of Life on Mars that he'd actually died?
They say there's like a little tiny snippet at the end of Life on Mars where they say, well, there's no use, we're losing him. And then he switches the radio off because, I can't stand this channel, switches the radio. But then it's brought back again in Life on Mars, and there's like a picture of Sam Tyler on Alex Drake's files, and it just says suicide. So I assume he's dead.
Oh, wow. Great series. Okay, so I remember Life on Mars better than I do Ashes to Ashes. I'm trying to remember, again, like, I'm skipping to the end. We could talk about things that happen in the middle. But like the thing that's interesting about it is because it's a time travel story, and it's a very unique. So I think on the last show we did, which if anyone's listening to this was the Extreme Improv chat show, and so now this is a bit of a crossover. Just because if we're going to focus on movies and things, I'll make this an episode of the Mega Movie Podcast. So this is a 2-part conversation across different podcasts. But
good.
Yeah, how about that? But I think I spoke to you about the show Quantum Leap that you hadn't seen.
You did, yes. You spoke to me about that, yeah.
What was interesting, let's make this, we'll talk about Doctor Who, we can perhaps bring up Back to the Future. You've seen Back to the Future, right?
Of course I have. I've seen them about a billion times.
Okay.
It's like my favourite film. It's my all-time favourite film.
We will make this a time travel themed episode. We found a theme there, Adam. But so what I was going to say is in Quantum Leap, the idea is that you get the time traveller in the 1999 when it's set as the present, and he sends his conscious back into the past, and it goes into someone else's being or their body. And I think that's quite similar to Life on Mars, even though they physically appear in the past. Because Sam is also in a hospital bed in a coma, it's just like his mind has gone back into the past as well, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's like his
conscious.
A part of him has gone back. Yeah. A part of him has gone back to that. Yeah, his soul maybe. And in Ashes to Ashes, it's made more clear what that is. And I think
remind me, because I have seen it, so don't worry about spoilers. But what was it?
So it turns out that it was limbo, police limbo. So the 1970s and 1980s were like a police limbo. It's called Gene Hunt's world, and Gene Hunt was effectively a biblical kind of figure that ferries the dead from limbo to the afterlife. And you know Nelson, who runs the pub?
Yeah.
He's like a kind of St. Peter, or St. Paul, sorry. So he greets them at the door of the pub at the end, and he goes, "Come in, like, to have a drink." And it's kind of like a ghostly, like, heavenly light. And then you've got the devil, who is this DCI that comes in, played by Daniel Mays, and he's saying things like, no, I can take you back home. I can take you back to where you belong. I've got a fresh new department that you can join. Come and join me. And they just don't believe him, so they go into the pub. But it's a brilliant kind of story.
Yeah.
So it's like a kind of limbo world.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, then another police officer, right when Gene Hunt sat in his office on his own at the end, another police officer from modern day comes in and goes, "Where's my iPad? Where's my iPhone?" Yeah. And he opens the door and goes, "Word in your shell, like, pal," which is what he said to Sam Tyler when he first appeared.
Yeah, so if I remember correct, Gene Hunt isn't quite aware that he's this guardian angel, is he? And so I think Alex makes him aware of this, and so by the end, when the next one turns up, he knows that, well, this is my purpose.
Yeah, he does. So he doesn't enter the pub at all. He has to stay there and ferry them. Yeah, he ferries them to the pub at the end when their job is done.
That's great. Like, the interesting thing with this is it gives like a religious, mystical reason for why these people are going back. That it's the afterlife, that it's limbo, and that they're becoming the people they need to go on to the afterlife. Which is, I'm not going to give the spoilers again because you haven't seen it, but I would say watch Quantum Leap. But they do play around with the idea of what is the force that is making the character, interestingly also called Sam, time travel. Is they say, is it God? Is it time? Is it fate? And they do question this. And there is a similar, again, I'm going to keep this vague, but there is a similar episode where he meets a being, which I suppose would be like the pub owner or like the Gene Hunt. There are equivalents there. I think they may have said like, oh yeah, this is similar to this, and I think that it'd be impossible for them not to be aware of that.
That's with Scott Bakula, isn't it?
Yes. Okay. So, Adam, I'll ask you.
Yes.
And we can go through some of the different ones here. Different time travel methods that we see in film and television programs. What one do you think is the best, or which one do you think makes the most sense if time travel were possible?
If time travel were possible, you see, the coolest is the TARDIS. Like, just without any question, the coolest is the TARDIS. But then I think I also love what they did with Life on Mars and Ashes to Ashes. I love that kind of concept of even though you're going back in time, it's like part of like a moving on, in a sense, like a limbo state to protect you. I love that concept. But then in Star Trek, I love the sort of like change it, like the I don't know how to put it, like when they change history, but they make history happen. And I like that kind of, I like that concept.
What is the method that they do in Star Trek then? How do they actually do it? Oh, all sorts. I'm trying to remember like the trouble with tribbles or trials and tribulations or whatever it was. In Deep Space Nine, they went back. How did they achieve getting back in time?
Yeah. So that was the trouble with Tribbles crossover, which was a Star Trek original series episode, which they crossed over with Deep Space Nine. And I think they were transporting some kind of dangerous time crystal in the Defiant, and it got activated somehow, and they got sent back in time. That's it. They took on someone, and he activated the crystal, sending them back in time so that he could meet his past self and stop himself getting arrested, which would of course change time and cause a paradox.
So I'm trying to remember. So that's obviously time travel in Star Trek.
Yeah.
They have time travel in, I believe they've got time travel in, what is the, like one of the movies, where they come back to Earth and there's like, they've got to save the whales or something like this. Which one's that?
Oh God, that was the
original, like a Kirk movie.
That was the original cast. I don't know how they did. I can't remember that one. I thought you were going to talk about First Contact.
Because that was the other one. I was going to try and do it in order, but yeah.
In order. No, good shout. Do it in order. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I don't know how they did it in that one.
No, I can't remember. And then when else would have they done? And then in the reboot series. I liked this because when it was a reboot, but the way they said it is because they had original Spock in it. They said that time has just been changed, so it meant that they could go off and change the storylines however they wanted, without just saying that everything didn't count. They were just like, it's a different parallel dimension.
Yeah, no, that was a good one. That was a really nice concept they went for there. But that one, I suppose, where it was set so sort of far into the future, and where it kind of tallies up with Picard. For anyone who hasn't watched the series of Picard, there's a whole kind of conspiracy behind what Spock did, and it was to do with Picard. Yeah, Picard was involved somehow.
Interesting. So I haven't seen Picard yet, so I can't.
Do watch.
Yeah, I will watch that one, but I can't comment. But yeah, I think so it would seem in Star Trek they've got various means of time travel.
They do a lot of different means of time travel, and I like the fact that there's always like a moral compass to it as well, of like changing history and like being careful of history and like meeting your heroes and all of this kind of stuff. I really like that, and the fact that they had to keep time on track in First Contact and make sure that the first warp drive happened, and they were involved in that themselves, so they created that. It was really nice. It was a really cool.
So you get onto the paradoxes there, don't you? Which is a regular trope in.
They do, travel. Yeah.
So it's like they time traveled back in time to make sure that the first warp drive got created. So they were involved in it, but they couldn't have got there if they hadn't got it. So for me, with that kind of thing, I always feel like, well, okay, so what we're watching as an audience is a version of the time, but it's not the original version. The original version is obviously people invented the warp drive, however they did it. Then it meant that they ended up being able to loop back, and then they helped make sure it still was created.
Yeah.
But we don't get to see the original version.
Oh, it's so complicated. It's brilliantly complicated, but I like it. I I like what they've done with that, what they did with those kind of episodes. There was also the one, and it's always kind of confuses me, but with Star Trek Voyager, I don't know if you ever watched Voyager.
Not a lot.
Not a lot of it.
No.
There was
years and years ago.
Years and years ago. Okay. Well, there was an episode where Captain Janeway's her future self came back and brought them back to the Alpha Quadrant using Borg technology. When she got them back, so she time traveled. So from her perspective, she spent 30 odd years in the Delta Quadrant and lost hundreds of her crew. So she goes back in time and prevents that. But then a new sequence of events happens. Then how do they get back from the Alpha Quadrant? It's a really confusing story. It's a very confusing story.
One of the time travel things which I always find interesting, because like I just gave the example of, you saw like time, but obviously that couldn't have been how it was originally because it's a paradox.
Yeah.
So I don't really know the books. I've heard the books on audio tape, but when it comes to Harry Potter, and then is it the third one? Prisoner of Azkaban has the time turner.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
The really interesting thing about that display of time travel in a film is, unlike a lot of films, if you see characters and you see events happen, and then you see them go back in time and change it, both times we saw Hermione and Harry live through this same section of time, they were exactly the same. So we only saw the changed version of time, because when we saw it the first time, we thought that Buckbeak was getting murdered and someone threw something at Hermione, and then when they go back in time, and then Harry does the Patronum, when we then see them go back in time, we see that Hermione realizes that it was herself that threw it. We find out that Buckbeak didn't get killed, and Harry realizes that he doesn't have to wait for his dad to turn up to do the Patronum, that it must have been him. So it meant that when we'd seen it the first time, the filmmakers had tricked us into thinking that we'd seen an alternative timeline, but they were actually just the same version of the time from a different perspective.
That is interesting, actually, because I was talking about this with my friends, and we were saying that it obviously had to have played out. Everything would have had to have played out as it was supposed to, but because those events had happened, so Buckbeak got executed, Sirius got taken away, Pettigrew escaped. Because those things had happened, it meant that when Harry witnessed his future self casting the Patronus, those events had happened, which meant that they were going to go back in time. They were eventually going to go back in time anyway, but Buckbeak would have had to have been executed. In order for that to happen. It's a really like,
it's difficult
concept, but
when you think about it. But both versions we see in the film are identical. We as an audience see it from a different perspective. So we never see when Buckbeak gets killed. The filmmakers trick us to think it's happened, but then we realise, oh no, they had saved them previously. We were just seeing the same events from two different angles.
Yeah, that is true. They did a really good thing. That was a brilliant film. That was probably one of my favourites, I think.
I think that may be my favourite, in fact.
Yeah. I would love to have seen how, because it was a completely different director, because they had Christopher Columbus for the first two, and then it's Alfonso, someone from the third one. I can't remember his surname. I would have really been intrigued to see how he would have handled the second, because that's my favourite. I think the second one is probably one of my favourites.
Chamber of Secrets.
My favourite book. Yeah, Chamber of Secrets is my favourite book. I've been intrigued to see how he would have handled that, because I reckon the film would have been completely different.
I do as well. Yeah. With the Harry Potter films, the first two feel very Christopher Columbus. So I'm trying to remember.
It does,
it may have been him or Spielberg, but when it's kind of like a Spielberg, like Hook or Goonies style adventure thing. Yeah. And then
it's a big fantasy, isn't it?
Yeah, the third one, but it's bright, it's gold, it's jolly. But the third one is just very bleak, and they get bleaker and bleaker and bleaker.
They did. They really, especially the third one. I think the third one has one of the darkest tones out of all of them, just because it felt so realistic. It was the first time that you actually thought, "Oh God, we're actually in a real world. We're actually in. This isn't just like some fantasy witches school. It's actually a proper It's actually a proper world. There's actually a proper world to it."
Yeah, absolutely.
That one and the sixth, which was Half-Blood Prince, they really nailed the sort of the darkness of that one. That was a really dark film.
Yeah,
it's really Again, I would like to have seen. Pardon?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say I'd like to have seen more from it, but like more of Tom Riddle and more of like Voldemort's backstory, which is a shame they didn't show it, because in the books it's really immense. Like, it's really cool. You get a proper mystery from it.
I just remember that the Harry Potter films came out along that, like starting with the first one, like so the first 3 years they came out at the same time roughly as the Lord of the Rings films. And
yeah, they did, didn't they?
They did. So it was something like fantasy was everywhere.
Yeah.
But the thing that always felt a shame to me is with the Lord of the Rings films, they basically filmed as much as they could from the books. And so like, right, here's a 3-hour film, but then when we put the DVD out, there's going to be like a 4.5-hour version. And it always feels a shame that they could have done that with the Harry Potters.
They should have done that with the Harry Potters, because there was so much they missed out. There was a lot they missed out. I mean, there was a whole backstories and whole like theories that they just. I mean, the films are fantastic, and I love them. I thought they're really good, but there was so much they missed out that was crucial as well.
Yeah, and for me, so I'm trying to remember. Is it the Goblet of Fire has Dobby in as well, and they completely cut it?
Yeah. It has Dobby, Bagman, loads of characters. Yeah.
But like for me, when they ended Deathly Hallows Part 1 on the death of Dobby, it's like Dobby hadn't been seen since the second film, and so
that's true. Yeah,
pressure. So to me, it like everyone knows who Dobby is, and everyone who'd experienced the books, obviously know more. But if you've just seen the films, it's like, well, this character doesn't feel like he means as much as he should do for this to be the ending of this movie.
I think a lot of really hardcore fans were hit by that, but not like people who'd just seen the films. I think it was just, it was not meaningless, but it certainly didn't have the impacts and the hit that it should have done. But there we go.
Yeah. Okay, so Adam, I'm going to just bring us back to the thought of time travel, because we can segue off on like little bits and pieces about any of the individual films or stories, but let's keep this
absolutely,
because I do like it. So we've spoken about a couple of examples of people kind of their essence, their soul or whatever going into either their body or someone else's body for their mind to time travel. We've said that there are several different methods that they've had in Star Trek of time travel.
Yes.
Let's talk about Back to the Future.
Oh, the ultimate time travel film.
It is.
Oh, brilliant. I love it.
So would you say it's your favourite film of all time?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Without a shadow of a doubt. I love Back to the Future.
I couldn't swear to it, but if someone said, "Well, David, it's your favourite film," I wouldn't argue it either.
No, you wouldn't question it. Yeah.
So many times.
Yeah.
All of them.
Absolutely.
And
how many?
Sorry.
How many times?
Oh, I couldn't count. Countless. So many times. Like it's Back to the Future, any of them, with perhaps the slight exception of 3. 3 I felt was a little bit slower paced, but even then, I could watch one on DVD, switch the DVD off, and if it's actually on television right away, I'd probably watch it again. You know what I mean?
Brilliant.
Okay, so
no, absolutely, I would.
Yeah, so Back to the Future, they go with the idea of time circuits and a flux capacitor, plutonium, to have a nuclear 1.21 gigawatts of energy.
That's it.
Which happens when you hit 88 miles an hour. It's all very complicated, series of ingredients to make the time travel work. But basically, you go fast in a car and somehow it can break time and you can end up somewhere in the past.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was such a brilliant brilliant concept of a film. Like Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd were just absolutely stellar. They were fantastic together. And I watched. I don't know if you got the. I think it's like the 30th anniversary or something like that DVD. No, 25th anniversary. That's it. 25th anniversary DVD. Because it's 30 years this year.
Wow.
For Back to the Future. Yeah, 1985. Yeah. It's 1985. It's 30 years. Is it?
It's 35 years. I was born in
35 years.
Yeah.
I was about to say, darn.
Yeah,
1985, 35 years.
I'll just pause you there before you continue your thought. The fact that Back to the Future came out in 1985 and that I was born in 1985, I often use that as one of my cases for why that was the greatest year of all time. Back to
the Future, man, it's all in there, 1985. But that was 35 years. Yeah, I was about to say, that makes more sense.
Okay, so what was on the DVD though?
So they had the original clips with Eric Stoltz playing Marty McFly, and it's a completely different. It just changes the whole film completely. And So I was going to say, I would love to see as much as they can with Eric Stoltz in that version of the film. I would as well. I reckon it would be completely different because they had pictures of him and the DeLorean when it went off in the car park with him and Doc Brown.
Yeah.
And that looked really cool. But then they've only got the scenes, I think, with him and his dad in the cafe. I don't know if they've got any others, but it was so surreal because it was like a completely new actor playing it.
Yeah. From what I know, they have a lot more because when they even put it on the DVD, I think they made it so it was slightly like poor quality, so you couldn't really do much with it. I'm not sure if you could hear him speak on these clips because they were just like showed it as an example. But I think they were filming for 6 weeks.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
So they must have so much of that film done. But so much. Like, and from what I understand of it, Eric Stoltz played it very straight. He played it not at all comedic. It was like very straight faced. I'm a time traveler. How is this for my psyche? I'm in the past, and it's like it's meant to be a fun movie. And they eventually replaced him.
Do you think it would have ever taken off as much as it did with him? Do you reckon it would have taken off?
Who's to say? Because the idea of it is so fantastic that I don't want to take anything away from Michael J. Fox. But like, I think the idea of the film, just captured people's imaginations, and everything about it was so good that I know they say they'll never remake it. Although there's a musical that I'm sure has probably just been cancelled with the whole virus thing. But they were literally, I've been waiting to see about when this musical was going to be coming out. But I don't think they'll ever properly remake it. But I think it could have been good with Eric Stoltz. I'm trying to think. Eric Stoltz, I think he was in... Did you ever see the movie The Fly?
No, I don't think. No.
Okay, so he was in the sequel to that, but if you've not seen it. So I've seen him in other things. And he's a decent actor. But if he was not playing it for comedy and light-hearted, fun movie, then it would have been quite different.
It would have been a very different film, yeah. Because Michael J. Fox just made that film because he made that character. It was quite sort of bumbly and quite like it was very sort of yeah. It was really like classic kind of 80s teenager, and he was doing Family Ties at the time. So he did that for several months. He filmed Back to the Future in the evenings and the weekends, and then Family Ties during the week, and then did a whole show recording. Left and then went to film Back to the Future. It was just immense. He had a really tough schedule. I've got both of his books, or two of his books, and I've ordered his third. Yeah, it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He's a really just inspirational person. He is,
because obviously, quite tragically, his career, even though he's continued to do stuff and he does like a lot of charity stuff as well, but I think it's Parkinson's that he's got, isn't it?
He's Parkinson's, yeah. Okay,
so in spite of any health things, the thing that's always struck me about Michael J. Fox is he still looks exactly the same as he did in 1985. He has never aged.
No, he's not. He's really good. He looks great for his age and his condition. Obviously, he does look a bit older now, but even so, he's still got that kind of sprightly spirit. Pardon?
I was going to say he scarcely looks older. Did you see? Because obviously there was the in Back to the Future 2, they go forward to 2015.
Yeah.
And when it reached that actual date 5 years ago, they did you see this? They appeared on either Jimmy Fallon or David Letterman or something like that.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah, that was so cool.
And the thing that's amazing about it is, one, Michael J. Fox, to me, he was dressed in the classic Marty costume. He still looks exactly the same. And the thing about Doc is, because Doc was meant to be older, Christopher Lloyd has just aged into looking like Doc did.
Yeah, he did actually. He has aged quite a lot, to be fair, Christopher Brown. But no, you're right. He did look pretty cool, actually, to be fair, in all of his like Marty stuff, and it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
So in terms of the time travel in Back to the Future, where do you rank? So, as good as the film is, how do you feel that the method of time travel? Do you believe it, or is it? How does it rank compared to some of the others we've mentioned, or other ones perhaps we haven't mentioned?
It's definitely a lot. I think it's definitely a lot more of a plausible time travel scenario, I think, because like a crazy inventor creates a time machine. It's a classic time travel scenario. It's like a jumping back in time, having to fix stuff, and then like racing back home in the car again. I think is a really like classic time travel story.
Yeah.
But I think it was, for its time, it was fantastic, and it was a really cool concept. But I think it's definitely a 1980s flashy concept, I think. Whereas there's other methods like the Star Trek and Doctor Who, they're those kind of methods of time travel, even though they're a lot more like absurd, like a lot more like futuristic and a lot more over the top, if you will. I think it's definitely, there's a really nice kind of element to it. It's like a believable element to it, and it makes sense, even though it's like, it's not real. It makes sense. Whereas I think Back to the Future, it's definitely got like a proper 80s like action, fun, adventure film. So I think that concept's a lot more different.
What was that other? There was a couple of like high concept films in the 1980s. One of them was Weird Science. Did you ever see Weird Science?
Yes.
Now, was Weird Science?
Yes, I know of that.
Mannequin. Oh no, but there was another film called Mannequin on the Move. There was like, oh no, so Weird Science, they made a Barbie doll into a woman.
Yeah.
And Mannequin on the Move, there was some sort of thing which brought a mannequin to life or something like this.
Really? That's mad.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. But it was like in the 1980s, they could just come up with like, there's a scientist and they've got some stuff, and it's all just made in their garage, and then all of a sudden, they can do these fantastic things. Did you ever hear that originally the time travel method in Back to the Future was going to be going through a fridge?
Yes, I knew that. Now that.
Oh, you're just frozen on me there, Adam. So I might have to put this as an edit point because you have frozen on me.
Oh gosh.
Oh no, you're back. You're back.
I'm back. Back from the future. No, that would be really cool. It was almost TARDIS, like, in a way, like having to go through a fridge.
Yeah.
Or like they were going to use a toaster as well, weren't they, or something like that? I know there was like toying with some ideas. But
I think it was a fridge, because I think what I heard was that the reason they changed it is that they didn't want to suddenly get lawsuits if children locked themselves in their fridges and suffocated.
Oh, yeah, true.
Although, do you know Ghostbusters?
Yeah.
So
yes, I do.
There is like Zool, the big bad in that was like inside the fridge, I suppose. So perhaps it was a very 80s things to have like magical fridges.
Yeah, it probably was. I mean, they had some pretty wacky ideas in the 80s. Like, they had some really, really crazy film ideas in the 80s. But I like it. It's charming. It's like really nice, like charming thing to watch. It's pretty cool. I like it. I love 80s films.
Yeah. Okay, so other than Back to the Future, just to segue onto this slightly, what comes to your head as your favourite 80s movies?
Oh,
this could be a topic for another day, but just very quickly.
You see, my all-time sort of thing of the 80s has to be Back to the Future on its own. Like, I thought it was a really quintessential like 80s set film. I don't really have many others that are favourites from that era. I don't really have any sort of major kind of like favorites from that era. Family Ties I loved. I thought Family Ties was a really good series.
Yeah.
And a fantastic sort of, and it was, that again was like a happy little family sitcom series. I thought that was really nice. Only Fools, of course. I'm a fan of the 80s comedies like Only
Oh,
Fools
yeah,
and
absolutely.
things like that. Yeah.
Okay, so
I love those. I love
in terms
those.
of 80s movies, a couple that come to my mind. This could be a slight segue if you know it, but things like Ghostbusters, the Goonies.
Oh yeah, Ghostbusters is
Yeah,
cool.
Goonies. Did you ever see the movie Big Trouble in Little China?
No, I don't think I
God,
did.
it is one of the most outrageous films. It's like it's got like Chinese mystical elements to it where people turn into monsters and dragons, and Kurt Russell's in it, who was in the movie The Thing and other stuff, and he's just like
Yeah.
a bad dude and he wants to get his car back, and like the whole thing is ludicrous. But the next one I was going to say, and I was going to come to, if you know it, because it is another time travel movie, is The Terminator.
Oh yeah, the Terminator.
Do you know The Terminator?
Yes, I do know the Terminator. I've not really properly watched it, but I know of the Terminator. Like I know all the classic quotes and all of that from the Terminator. Yeah.
So obviously, so we won't stick on this too long if you don't know that well. But it's another time travel film where they're saying that in the future there's been like a nuclear war, and they have time displacement equipment, and they send back someone to save a woman who will give birth to a baby who will grow up to be the leader of the resistance. That will like defeat the robots that have taken over the future. So absolutely bonkers concept that when you try and like explain it. And it's another example of a big paradox. Again, if I won't well, to be honest, Adam, you know, this film came out in '83. You should have watched it by now. So you'll get a tiny spoiler here, but it doesn't ruin what happens in it. So the big paradox in it is that there is a protector sent back from the future to protect the woman, so that the robot that's sent back to kill her, which will then mean that she doesn't have the baby, but that becomes the soldier who stops the robot. The protector sent back is the father, and so it's like, but how could he go back in time to become the father? Because that he would have this guy would have needed to have existed in the first place before his dad.
To go back in time. Yeah.
And so again, to me, it just means that there was an original version of the timeline where someone else was his father, and that version of the resistance leader got wiped out of existence.
Oh my God, that is really confusing. That is so confusing. Like,
Okay,
that's mad.
I'm going to bring it back to the Future because there's a similar paradox in that, which I want to run by.
Oh yeah.
So when Back to the Future 1 begins, you see Marty, and then you see his brother Dave, and I forget the sister's name, but then you see his parents, George and Lorraine, and George is a wimp, Lorraine's smoking and out of shape, and they're all kind of, you know, a bit losers. Uncle Joey is in prison, and everything about them is a bit rough. Everything happens throughout the film. Marty almost makes it so they don't become a couple, so he almost wipes out his own existence. But when he manages to get back to 1985, suddenly his dad is a published author. You know, his mum is suddenly, you know, in much better shape, and she doesn't smoke or drink. And he says to his brother, like, what are you wearing? He's like, I always wear a suit to the office. Has Marty actually just erased his original family from existence, and now he's living in a parallel dimension?
He must be. I mean, because all of that is, I mean, it's only changed their personalities. I don't think he's probably erased the original, like, versions of his family. Like they've grown up and become different. He's erased them.
Well, actually, no, he hasn't killed them, in fact, because we know from Back to the Future 2, as the doc shows on the whiteboard, where he says about this line represents time and this represents the alternative 1985. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Right.
He does that drawing on the board, doesn't he?
Yeah. So the original 1985, Marty went back to 1955, but he never returned. Because just as he ended up in an alternative 1985 where Biff is basically Donald Trump, where Biff is this tycoon who owns hotels and things. His home that he went to, where his dad is now an author and his brother works in an office, isn't his original 1985. So the original 1985, Marty went out in the middle of the night and never came back. How dark is that?
Oh, that is really twisted. Yeah, that is actually really twisted. I didn't think of it like that at all.
Yeah.
I always, because I assumed that, but I thought that timeline just doesn't exist. The original 1985 just doesn't exist.
But we learn in Back to the Future 2 that there is a parallel.
It creates an alter.
And so and so this we could probably work out, or someone with a lot more spare time on their hands than us could probably work out how many different alternative timelines we see in Back to the Future, because every time they time travel, it creates a new one. So it's a coincidence that when they go back to when Marty goes back to 1885 and then ends up at the end of Back to the Future 3 and his dad's an author and stuff like this, it would seem that that's just good luck, because 100 years ago he'd changed time again, and the Doc had changed time when he'd gone there. Because if Doc wrote a letter to Marty that he got at the end of Back to the Future 2, do you remember this?
Yes, yeah, I remember that.
I've written you a letter, or whatever the quote is. I've got something for you, a letter.
That's it. Yeah.
So Doc had gone back in time, but Marty still existed. So if we work this out, for the Doc to have been able to give a letter that still turned up to Marty, that meant he was still on that timeline, and it hadn't become an alternative timeline. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can affect your current timeline in small ways, but something that drastically changes it creates an alternative.
Yeah, because a lot of stuff changed in Biff's timeline. In like Biff's alternative world, it was like in that alternative 1985, he had the entire town was wrecked. Like, he was married to Marty's mum. The family were living with him. Like, Joey was in jail again. I don't know. It was everyone was sort of living a completely different existence, and Marty was in some
exactly.
Somewhere.
In that sense, because also we see in Back to the Future 2 that there can be two Docs and there can be two Martys, as they explain and show. Does it mean that there was another Marty who was in a school somewhere abroad?
Yeah, it must be. Yeah, it must be, because if they sent him off, then it's a different Marty. It's a completely different sequence of events. Yeah.
And that would also mean that there was another Doc who was the one who was
insane. Yeah,
put in an asylum. So it's just a flaw, basically, Adam. I think we can put it down to.
Yeah, it's literally
Doc to be able to send a letter to Marty, and him being the same timeline. That shouldn't be able to happen, basically, from what they've established.
No, it shouldn't. But it does. It does somehow.
However, Adam, I'll use this as the next segue, but we can come back to the Future if we need to.
Yes.
There is one explanation from the greatest time to travel story that I think has ever existed. I just jumped.
Right.
Well, I don't know. There was sunk on me. I think it was just. I'm just going to check what the hell this was. Ugh.
Like a spider, was it?
I don't know. It was like a creature. It's whatever it is. It's dead.
Oh God.
I think it's just. My God, this is a panic. Anyone listening to this, or if they're watching it, I think it was a bit of fluff.
I hope so.
But because it's got a bit of string which is just wrapped round, as I went to pick it up, it flicked.
Oh.
And I'm 99% certain it's fluff. But whatever it was, wasn't alive.
No, definitely.
So it may have just been a bit of fluff. But if it was something else, it wasn't moving, just other than that something flicked, which looked like a leg.
Oh my God, that's creepy.
Where were we? Now that I'm traumatized.
The greatest time travel story.
Oh, yes.
Ask me a question.
The greatest
debunk a theory.
Okay, so that basically will come down to, as we've already mentioned about Doctor Who.
Oh, here we go.
Now, the reason I will say it is undoubtedly Doctor Who is we've just spoken about these paradoxes and how can Doc send a letter to Marty and it not create an
how can it all happen? Yeah.
And Doctor Who, after about 40 years of existence, answered it with a simple phrase: wibbly, wobbly,
timey-wimey. There we go. That is the ultimate who phrase. That is the ultimate time phrase.
Something doesn't make sense. Just say, "Oh, is this big ball of wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff?" Yeah,
it is. That is time travel in a nutshell. That is time travel in a nutshell. It's just it. Doctor explained it beautifully.
Yeah, but that's their get out of jail free card with any problem that they've got.
Oh, it is.
So many contradictions in Doctor Who, but that explains it every single time. You
see, with that, we talk about alternative timelines. Doctor Who's probably created thousands of them. Yeah. Doctor Who's probably created so many of them. I actually watched. There was a really lovely, because it's been I don't know how many years it's been now, but there was an anniversary of Sarah Jane's death the other day.
I didn't
anniversary of Liz Sladen's death.
Yeah.
And Russell T Davies wrote a special scene that was like a kind of part audio, part Zoom, like mashup of all the companions.
Right.
And it was a really lovely little thing. It was basically, they were talking about Sarah Jane's funeral, and they brought together all the old cast from the Sarah Jane adventures. They brought back Joe Grant. They brought back a few of the kind of characters, and they all spoke about Sarah Jane, and it was a really lovely little kind of story. But I keep on thinking about all of the crazy kind of alternate universes she created in that like little series that she did.
Sure.
And it was just how many Doctor Who create is absolutely insane.
Well, there's countless. And the other thing, and I'm trying to think who. So Wibbly Wobbly Timey Wimey first got mentioned in the episode Blink.
It did,
which was Stephen Moffat wrote it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think. So the other thing that came up in the new era of Who, and I don't think you can correct me if I'm wrong that it'd come up previously, but I think, when was the first time they speak of the idea of there are fixed points in time, things that always have to be?
Now, I think it was probably.
I know it's mentioned in the Waters of Mars.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to remember if there are other times where they talk about there are fixed points in time, things that always have to be. And that allows them to get away with anything.
Yeah.
Because they can say, well, it doesn't matter what the Doctor, who he saves, who he doesn't save, what happens, what doesn't happen. It can be, well, because people, look, there is the episode, sorry, I'm going off on tangents left and right here. There is the episode, Let's Kill Hitler. Which, the ultimate problem with anything with time travel in, or any superhero, like, why didn't, even though Captain America may have like fought the Nazis in World War II, like, why didn't Superman stop 9/11? Is always the dilemma. And in Star Trek, I think they have this thing where they say about, we cannot interfere in the past, or we cannot interfere with undeveloped civilizations, and that's how they explain these things away. But why doesn't the Doctor just go back in time and help the Allies defeat the Germans, the Nazis? And they don't say that World War II is a fixed point in time, but that's how, because they've established this idea, you can take things like World War I, World War II, you can take things like 9/11.
Yeah.
Probably in the future, you could even take the coronavirus, and the Doctor can say, not just, well, I was on a different planet at the time, because he's got a time machine. He could always come back and change it. It can always be just a sense of, well, certain things had to happen, so other things that needed to happen would happen in the future.
Yeah, I think they kind of explain away, although they kind of like put those kind of points, like the fixed point kind of stuff. They always mentioned it. They mentioned it in the Pompeii episode. He says, what happens here always has to happen.
That's it. And that's the first time it came up.
Yeah, that's the episode, the Pompeii episode. He said, what happens here always has to happen. It's a fixed point in time. And I think you're right. Why doesn't he go back in time and stop all these horrible things from happening? I think because he knows that it has to be replaced with something else.
Yeah,
it will have to be replaced by another.
Catastrophe. Did it? No, it came up earlier. So in the Christopher Eccleston episode, where Rose stops her dad from getting killed, and then these monsters turn up that start tearing down time.
Oh yeah.
So even if they hadn't called it a fixed point in time,
someone's alive in the world now that wasn't.
Their own, someone who, had messed up like history. Yeah.
That's it. He said that someone's alive in the world now that wasn't, and that's bad because it's set the balance of nature off, and it's effectively destroyed nature. But I think that's the Doctor's reasoning, and all these kind of superheroes' reasoning is that it's stopping nature, it's stopping the natural course of events. And I think there's small changes, but not big ones. Like he said in Waters of Mars, he could have destroyed time by saving Adelaide. She then commits suicide, which puts the story straight in. But he realizes how big an impact he made just with that one small little saving of their lives. It's changed history in a small way. So there is a lot of there's a lot of big issues in that. There's a lot of big kind of concepts with time travel. But I think that's the best way of explaining it, really, is that it stops a huge chunk of history being, destroyed. Yeah.
Okay, so we also see in Doctor Who that there's, I don't know how different it is, but like Captain Jack has like a time bracelet or something he's got.
Vortex manipulator.
Vortex manipulator, that's it. Sorry, I couldn't bring that to mind. And is that, does River Song have one of those as well?
She gets one, but it's not kind of mentioned where or how.
Yeah. But so there's a couple of different methods of time travel in it then.
She gets it from, I just remembered, she gets it from Captain Jack, I've just remembered, because she says, no, it was Dorian Maldavar said it. He said, off the wrist of a handsome time traveller.
That's it, yeah.
Time agents.
They allude to it being Jack, don't they?
Yeah, because obviously they chop his wrist off somehow. Because when he comes back, does he have it when he reappears in the recent series?
I can't remember. I can't honestly remember how he's got it.
No, because he just appeared, as far as I can remember.
And he's on a spaceship somewhere. Like, I need to watch it again to actually remember all these details.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's at least a couple of different methods of time travel. Obviously, the Weeping Angels are a method of time travel, and that's a very interesting one.
True.
The way they kill you is by zapping you back into the past, and then they feast on your potential energy.
Yeah,
which is another great concept.
As in they feed on the energy you leave behind, or
yes. So I think they say about your potential, basically, is the way they explain it. But it's the energy that you would have had, and it's what gives them sustenance or whatever. Yeah,
they were a brilliant concept. They were an incredible villain. Yeah, that was a terrifying episode. They haven't appeared. I don't think they've not appeared in quite a long time. But that was Moffat's creation, wasn't it? So I suppose it would have to be discussed if they were to bring them back.
See, the one thing that, and I really liked when they reappeared in like the 2-part episode with Matt Smith, like with I can't remember what they're called, like the Forest of the Dead or whatever. Something. No, it may not have been the Forest. I might have been thinking of a different episode. But there was like
No, I know what you mean. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Forest of the Dead was David Tennant.
Yeah, okay. But they end up in a forest, and they go with a complete opposite idea. So it's very creative, where if with the Weeping Angels, they're so fast that if you even blink, they can really move. But if you look at them, they can't move. And so on the first episode, there was the idea of don't blink. And then on the second episode with Amy Pond, where she had got the image in her mind, they had the idea that shut your eyes. If you open your eyes, even for a split second, you'll die. So it completely reversed it. So one went where you have to keep your eyes open, and then it went to you have to keep your eyes shut.
Yeah, that was a cool episode. That was a really good one. And then, of course, Amy and Rory's last episode, which was heartbreaking, to say the least.
I didn't like it as much, and I didn't like that. It felt like a sad ending for them. I didn't like that that's how they ended off those characters.
Really? Why not?
Because you didn't see them. It was just that they're trapped, but they're trapped together, which is kind of nice that, you know, they're like still together or something, but they are just trapped in this hotel or wherever it was in New York, that they didn't just get to have their whole life. Obviously, they didn't get to raise River as like their own child because she got taken as a baby, and so there was lots of tragedy to that story.
There was. They had a really cool deleted scene actually that I don't think ever got even made. But it was like shown as like there was shown as pictures where Rory's grandson or like great grandson or something goes to Rory's dad, so his great granddad, with a letter, and he reads, and obviously it's the actor that plays Arthur Weasley, and he reads the letter. Says, "Please don't worry about me. I've gone away. I've gone back to 1920 whatever. But please don't worry about me. I'm happy. I'm safe. And this is your grandchild." And he sees the. Oh, it's lovely. It's a really lovely scene. I'm surprised. I'm sad they didn't put it in.
Yeah, because again, that goes back to the original Weeping Angels episode where, like Sally Sparrow's friend who gets zapped back in time.
Yeah.
When she sends like the grandchild, and that's so Doctor Who, where the guy turns up and he's like, "I have a letter for you. You must read it." It was so Doctor Who, and not Doctor Who, Back to the Future. It was so
it was.
Similar, like the guy turning up in the trench coat. "I have a letter for you," like moments after someone's vanished into the past. But he was the grandchild, and then it was like able to say, well, she met a guy, the first person she met when she went back in time, and they lived happily ever after, and that was the grandmother. So yeah, I think they should have done something like that because that would have been a nice callback to the original Weeping Angel story as well.
Yeah, they should. They should have kind of added that bit in as well. But no, it was nice. It was such a lovely story. But I think if they had added that bit in, I think it would have made it like a nice kind of full circle story. Whereas I think we didn't really get, as much as it was a lovely story, we didn't really sort of get a resolve with the dad or with anything else really. Like you did with Donna, you didn't really get like a big thing with Donna, right?
I know, yeah. And they do it that often especially in New Who, like the companions have quite terrible endings. So Rose probably ended up the best, but at first her first exit was that she's just trapped in a parallel dimension.
Yeah, her first exit was yeah,
but then they sent her a clone David Tennant, so she lives happily ever after.
Yeah.
And then who's the next one? Martha ended up.
Martha got a good ending.
But
Martha got a good ending.
Tragic from the beginning because the Doctor just never liked Martha. That was her tragedy. And in the end,
yeah, he always kind of longed for Rose that whole time.
Like, I have a Martha here.
Oh wow!
Yeah, one of the few things I've got. I've also got a Tom Baker.
Oh, cool! Nice.
Random Doctor Who things from a charity shop.
I got this. Oh, it's brilliant.
Okay, so just another quick segue. Do you know what? We'll have to start wrapping this up. Who's that signed by?
Russell T Davies.
Oh my God.
Make sure I'm pointing at the right one. Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat, and then these guys are the illustrators.
Wow. That's incredible, Adam. That is incredible. Where did you get that signed?
Forbidden Planet. They did a book signing.
Oh,
literally about 2 years ago now. Yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah, so did you see, I think it was on television last night, there was the charity event, the Big Night In, where they had something with the doctors.
Yes, I watched it on YouTube. I didn't watch it last night, but I watched it on YouTube.
Yeah, I saw it on YouTube. But what was I going to say? So, all of the doctors, living ones, of course, except for Christopher Eccleston. I wonder why he didn't participate. I wonder if he was.
Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah,
he has been such a holdout on doing anything related to Doctor Who.
Yeah,
I think there are companies that I wouldn't ever work with again that I've had a bad experience with. But I think he's worked with the BBC again. Why won't he just do something, even like a charity thing, where he can film it in his own home to say, "I'm the Doctor," and everyone would have liked that. But
everyone would have loved that. Yeah, it's his own decision, I suppose. Got to respect that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so was there some other point that we need to say? So we can begin to wrap this one up, but we can do, again, Adam, we always just have to keep doing future episodes, just because it always feels like there's so much more.
There's always so much to talk about, yeah.
Yeah, but just in terms of time travel methods, are there any other movies or films that are ones that jump out to you that are time travel based that we haven't mentioned?
So I can't think. I don't think there is.
Oh,
Audiobooks.
Okay. Did
There
you
is Big
know?
Finish.
Oh yeah, but that's okay. But what I mean is like that's Doctor Who. We've covered Back to the Future. We've said about Star Trek and Life on Mars, where we started this. Did you ever see Goodnight Sweetheart?
Nick Lyndhurst.
Nicholas
Is that the
Lyndhurst.
Nick Lyndhurst series?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, that was
That was a time travel
cool.
one. And that was
I
like
never got that.
you never got it.
Yeah, I tried to watch it and it was, I don't know, I just couldn't get into it.
See, it's to me, I really like it and I have great nostalgia for it. But it's also quite a problematic series. Just because, I'll refresh your memory, just for anyone watching, listening as well, just to clue them up.
Yeah.
It's basically like a magic portal or a magic door. That's the method of time travel in Goodnight Sweetheart, where there's an alleyway that when Nicholas Lyndhurst, because it's set in the 1990s, walks through this alleyway, there is a certain point where when he crosses over it, it's suddenly the 1940s, and he's in the middle of World War II. And it's basically just like a magic portal. And later on, suddenly there are other time travelers and people that manage time holes, and they add a lot more science fiction to it, which to me was a real shame. But the reason why it was problematic is because he was a time traveler who was in 1993 or 4, whenever it was set. He's got a wife, and he goes back in time and he meets a woman who's also married back then, and he has an affair with her, and then he ends up married to both of them. And the idea of like a love story across time is great, but the idea that he's just living with both wives at different time periods is really problematic. And like the more time has gone on, the more it's like, yeah, you're really not a good guy, are you, Nick?
No, yeah, it is a bit weird. It is really weird. Yeah. No, I just couldn't get it as a whole series.
I liked it. It was because it was a sitcom. But the other thing, and this was something interesting about Nicholas Lyndhurst in general. So obviously you mentioned Only Fools and Horses. See if you agree with this observation. When you watch like series 1, 2, 3, 4 of Only Fools and Horses, Nicholas Lyndhurst's character Rodney, he's all quite dopey.
Yeah.
He's like, and he's quite, oh no, I'm doing this, Dale, and this sort of thing. But later on, he's suddenly incredibly well spoken. He's tried to, make himself more like Cassandra, who he marries, and he speaks in a more professional way and stuff like this, and he doesn't seem quite the same character. And the exact same thing happens in Goodnight Sweetheart, where at first he's like a TV repairman, and then later on he's a lot more serious. And I don't know what happened with Nicholas Lyndhurst, but in both of his shows, he became a lot more serious as they went on.
Yeah, he must have just. I suppose he just changed. He just changed his style as it went on. That's the only sort of explanation I can come up with, really, because I noticed that as well.
Yeah.
And he was the same in Rock and Chips. He was like, which was the Only Fools and Horses prequel. Did you watch that?
I did. Yeah.
I loved it. I thought that was fantastic. He was brilliant in it as well. As a proper as a
Freddie
gangster,
the Frog, wasn't he?
Yes, Freddie the Frog. Yeah, Freddie Bobdell. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I went to that pub. That pub is near where I used to work. That whole area in Greenwich is near where I used to work, and I get the bus. So you know where Del Boy went to school?
Yeah.
I used to get the bus past there every day. I used to get
amazing.
past that school. It's a nice place. But that was a really good series as well. But he was very kind of quite well spoken.
Yeah.
Kind of gangster in that as well. He was. Yeah. I could tell as he's got older, he's become more well spoken.
More gangster.
Yeah.
Okay, so Adam, we'll begin to wrap this up. So I mentioned Goodnight Sweetheart. Are there any other time travel? We could do another time travel thing, I suppose, in the future.
We can do another time travel one. Rick and Morty, I'm pretty sure.
Do you know what? I've never watched it.
I've watched a few episodes. It's good. It is a bit crazy, but it's good. It's good. It's really cool.
Yeah. So okay. So there's probably some other time travel ones we've forgotten, but I will wrap this one here, Adam. Just because even though I could keep talking, in terms of it being a podcast, there will be a certain point where people think that's a 4-hour podcast. We can't just watch it in one go. So for the sake of viewers,
that's true.
Very true. But thank you so much for coming and doing the show again, Adam.
You're very welcome.
Where can we find you?
So I'm Adam Hughes on Facebook. Adam Hughes Actor as a page, and then there's my name, Adam Hughes. You got my Facebook page there. Dissecting the Magic is a Harry Potter podcast I'm part of, which we'll be creating more episodes soon for, and it's on the Facebook page as well. And Adam Richard Hughes on Instagram.
Okay, fantastic. And I'm David Pustansky, which is spelled Pustansky, and just put David Pustansky on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. And of course, this is the Extreme Improv Podcast Network, and this is going to be on the Mega Movie Podcast element of it. So look up the Mega Movie Podcast or Extreme Improv. Either way, it'll be on the Extreme Improv YouTube channel and Extreme Improv Facebook page. So follow Extreme Improv on anything: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Mixer, the lots. It's all on everything.
All of them. All of them.
So until next time, thanks so much, everyone, and bye for now.
Goodbye for now, everybody.